Welcome back to Words of Paradise. I'm your host, Leon Idol, and Joe Rogan has had some famously bad takes about certain things. Sometimes I agree with him, sometimes I don't. He's also definitely notably had some bad takes about the MCU, or at least what the media calls bad takes. A lot of them I actually agree with. At least I agree with the overall sentiment. Maybe not his reasoning. It just shows that Joe Rogan, not a comic book guy, doesn't know a lot about the lore and whatnot. But at the end of the day, what he's complaining about does actually have some merit. It's just the reason he's complaining is wrong. And I'm wondering if that's going to be the case in this article here, because Joe Rogan knows why people hate Captain Marvel. I'm very interested to see what he has to say on this, because, yeah, he's right. People definitely hate Captain Marvel. In fact, I can think of a myriad of reasons why people hate Captain Marvel, but I'm wondering if they're the same as what Joe Rogan says. So let's go through here. Joe Rogan believes many Marvel fans hate Captain Marvel because she doesn't have a boyfriend. Okay, well, I was already wrong. This is not at all where I thought this was going. However, I do think a case can be made for this. Just reading that headline, or not headline, but whatever this little portion is called, I have thoughts, but I'm gonna wait to see what the article says before I go on with them. But there could be something interesting here. Let's check it out. To this day, there is no Marvel Cinematic Universe character quite so divisive as Captain Marvel. Some find the powerful hero an awesome and inspirational addition to the MCU, but others have expressed problems with everything from her hairstyle to Brie Larson, the actor behind the spandex. Well, I will agree. Brie Larson is the main problem with Captain Marvel. And yeah, Brie Larson and the way she speaks with fans and her overall demeanor and just... But she hasn't been in the news in quite a while for anything so bad. Now, with the new Marvel's movie coming up, we'll see if that firestorm starts up yet again. But also just the decisions at Marvel behind why they chose Captain Marvel and their sort of agenda reasonings. So it does fall on both sides. I can't exactly claim that Brie Larson is the problem with all of it, because they could have cast an actress I love, like let's say Anne Hathaway, but if Marvel was doing the Marvel things, it still would have been an unlikable character, but at least the actress would have still been likable. On an episode of his recent podcast, Joe Rogan claims to have figured out why people hate Captain Marvel. The fact that they almost gave her too many powers. Okay, see, that's different than what they said up top about the boyfriend thing, and yeah, I can agree with that. People have made that same claim about Superman for years. Now, I like Superman, but mainly because I like the symbolism and what he stands for. I do get why some people find him OP and boring. I disagree, and you'd have to be a lore hound to really understand that. But on a general surface level perspective, yeah, I think Joe Rogan kind of hits the nail on the head here. And that the independent superhero didn't have a boyfriend like Wonder Woman did, which is why the host thinks fans like Wonder Woman better. Okay, so I am going to go ahead and get into what I was going to say up there, near the top of this article, because I do think there's a little bit of merit to it. It's going to, of course, come off like, oh, she's a woman, so she needs a man. Like, oh, we don't want to watch a female superhero unless there's a boyfriend or a man involved. And no, that's not true. You know, to start with Wonder Woman, one of the best parts, in fact, my favorite part of the Wonder Woman movie, and even the second one, despite the second one being trash, was the chemistry between Wonder Woman and Steve Trevor, the character, Chris Pine played. Just having them bounce off each other, it was cute, it was fun to see, they had great chemistry, it felt real and believable. But not only with Wonder Woman, with male superheroes too. I mean, one of the biggest things about Spider-Man, the Sam Raimi trilogy, and even the Amazing Spider-Man, as awful as those were, was the romance. We like seeing superheroes have a love interest to fight for. We like seeing Mary Jane. We like seeing Gwen Stacy. Even, Tony Stark and Pepper Potts have this weird sort of romance that was pushed very well in the films and felt believable. And there's a reason Avengers Endgame ended with Captain America in the 1940s dancing with the love of his life. Oh my goodness, I'm blanking on her name. But the point is, yeah, the romantic aspect of superhero characters is always been there, has always been there, whether it be male or female, because it gives us that bit of human connection that we like to see. Even the greatest action movies have romance to them. I mean, think about Die Hard. The entire concept of Die Hard, when you boil down to it, it's a cop who... his wife may very well be divorcing him, but he's still ready to go through hell and high water to save her life anyway. It really boils down to that. And So, yeah, I think that Joe Rogan may be onto something here. Not that people don't necessarily want to see a strong, independent woman, but the romance aspect of superheroes, they work. People like them. There is something to connect with. So, yeah, Brie Larson, her Captain Marvel not having a boyfriend, not having any sort of romantic entanglements, it's one less layer of relatability in a character that already isn't relatable. As with many proclamations from Joe Rogan, his thoughts on Captain Marvel seem to be a mixed bag. For example, he may have a point when it comes to the idea of making her character too powerful in relation to other MCU heroes. At one point in the podcast, Joe Rogan asked an interesting question. If Thor's a god, then what the fuck is Captain Marvel? Because that shit trumps everything. One of the problems with the MCU is that eventually you'll always find yourself wondering why the authorities and other heroes don't call in some bigger guns when they need help. But both Captain Marvel movie and the climax of Avengers Endgame, in which Captain Marvel respectively fought an entire alien fleet and went toe-to-toe with Thanos, established her as the most powerful superhero around who could instantly end almost any battle. Joe Rogan seems to be pointing out that having a character as disproportionately powerful as Captain Marvel makes it hard to create balanced battles. And this is likely why she's made so few appearances in the MCU so far. Exactly. And you can tie that into the whole not having a boyfriend thing, or a love interest of any sort, because if she's already unrelatable due to how overpowered she is, you need to find other ways to make her relatable. And by taking out the love interest aspect, which everyone, if you don't have a love interest in your real life, at least pine for one, everyone can relate to that. So now you've taken away another bit of, humanity. Yeah, I think the two are actually intrinsically linked. However, Joe Rogan's second point, the fans don't like Captain Marvel due to the lack of a boyfriend, seems really out there. The host wants to compare Captain Marvel to Wonder Woman, but while it's true that Chris Pine was a charming love interest in Wonder Woman, he wasn't exactly the big draw for audiences compared to Gal Gadot. No, he wasn't the big draw, but no one's talking about, oh, we're going to see the movie for the superhero love interest. That's not what they're going to the movie for. But that's what sticks with people. That's what people like to see, because that's the human connection that people can actually identify with. So saying, oh, it wasn't a big draw. We're not talking about what is and isn't a big draw. We're talking about what works in a film and what works for characters and writing. And romance works when it's done well. And the return of Chris Pine's character ended up being arguably one of the worst parts of Wonder Woman 1984. No, I heavily disagree. One of the only good parts about 1984 was seeing those characters together again and bouncing off one another with that chemistry, because other than that, the movie sucked. The opening fight scene was awful. The whole ending climax made no sense. But that nice middle chunk when they're vibing and just having fun and they've got that chemistry, that's the only part of the movie that's actually tolerable because you really believe that chemistry and that romance. It's worth noting that Joe Rogan is basing his entire discussion of Captain Marvel on the idea that most fans hate the character. Well, because they do. Her movie made over $1 billion and outgrossed Wonder Woman and dozens of other superhero movies. Quite frankly, characters that are hated by most of the public don't go on to headline such high gross. No. That is so they don't go on to headline such high grossing films. No. What? The Marvels is going to do trash numbers. People went to see Miss Marvel because Marvel banged it over our heads that you need to see this before you see Endgame. You absolutely have to see this movie before Endgame or you're not going to understand it. Marvel basically said, if you don't see this film, don't bother seeing Endgame because you need them to connect to one another. When really, you didn't. It helped, but you didn't even need to. Everyone went and saw it because, for one, everyone was seeing every MCU movie at the time, and second, because it was basically just another chapter in a book, the penultimate chapter. People weren't going for Captain Marvel. They weren't going for Brie Larson. They were going so they could understand Endgame in its entirety. So don't even play that crap. Oh, giant freaking robot, you are a mistake of a company. Chances are high that Joe Rogan is dunking on Captain Marvel because of statements that Brie Larson previously made about not caring what white critics had to say about certain films. Joe Rogan is not the type that cares about that sort of thing. He is not. She said that years ago. If Joe Rogan cared about it, he would have made comments then. He wouldn't have waited 5 or 6 years and then start dunking on it. No, that's... Oh my goodness, the bias is palpable in this bogus. This statement ended up being a flashpoint in the never-ending culture wars that are the bread and butter for hosts like Rogan. So it's no surprise that his big note from Marvel executives is to make the character less powerful and give her a random boyfriend. That's not even what you said. He's just saying that's one of the reasons people don't like her. It's not, hey, give her a random boyfriend. No. Don't be too hard on Rogan, though. We're confident he's going to forget about Captain Marvel and start ranting about weird boomer memes he found on Facebook any minute now. Okay, well, this article was not insightful at all. It did nothing but try and shill for Brie Larson and Miss Marvel without even bringing up the new up-and-coming Marvels movie, which I find strange, and trash Joe Rogan and not even attempt to understand his point of view. Or if they did attempt to understand it and actually knew what he meant, they intentionally inverted it and ignored it to take it the most basic way to attack him. And oh, what a shill article. That was infuriating. But that's just my take on it. Maybe you have a different one. So let me know in the comments below, or let me know on Twitter at BoltTheWord. And please subscribe to this channel. I'm wanting to really grow it in 2023 and take a look at more awful pop culture articles like this. And I'd like you to be along for the ride. But until next time, this has been Words of Paradise.